IVM.
Hey, welcome to Shunya 1, episode 82. Back after our break once again. We're continuing our episodes. It was a fun episode with Praveen last week.
Yeah, and really good feedback came in on that. I'm not reading out anything from the Slack channel right now, but I think that we had some good... it was a good episode, and we got a lot of people who really enjoyed listening to it.
Yes, and it was fun to have Anupam also with us.
Yes.
I think a whole bunch of people asking our guest and also sort of engaging in conversation. He's a fun guy.
Anupam's always fun to do this stuff with.
Yeah.
This is the second time he was on, right? You guys interviewed me once. So
correct.
That is...
correct. If you guys have not heard the show Paisa Vaisa, go check it out on the IVM
Also,
podcast
you should check out Anupam talking about Shiladitya on Twitter. It's quite funny. Did you see what was going on today between all ex-guests, right? Miten, Anupam and Anand and Kuldeep all messing with you at the same time on Twitter.
Yeah, it's fun.
It is fun.
I like all the attention that I get.
Yes, yeah. I think Anupam said something like, I saw Shiladitya and he's so zen, he's floating. And then Miten's like, he's not floating, he's wafting.
My goodness.
It was...
Coming back to what we have in store for you today. This is actually a conversation we had before the start of the season. Mm-hmm. So we had a chance to talk to Robin Sukhia, who's our guest for the day. He's the Secretary General and President of the Sweden-India Business Council. We spoke a bunch about how, interestingly enough, there's a lot of India-Sweden collaboration in the tech space.
Yes, there is.
There's, of course... I think IKEA, I remember, is the biggest company we know.
So Storytel is somebody who I work with fairly regularly as well, who is also a Swedish company.
Yeah. And of course, Truecaller is also a Swedish company.
Truecaller is also Swedish. Did you see the news about Truecaller yesterday?
Exactly. Biggest market in India.
Yeah.
And 100 million daily active users.
And the number of people using payments on Truecaller. That blew my mind.
Absolutely. So there's a lot, I think, to take away from this episode. So let's get right into it. All right, welcome to the show, Robin. How's it going?
Thank you very much. Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, you've, of course, been to India before. You keep coming over from Stockholm. How's your trip been so far this time around?
It's been excellent. I've been traveling to India every second month for the last 14 years.
Wow.
It's been good.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Have you been part of the Swedish-India Business Council for that long?
Yes, I have.
Oh, really? Okay, then that explains that.
And in that time, in 14 years, you actually have a very interesting perspective on how companies and specifically business relationships have changed between our countries for a while now, right? Since we talk about tech here on this show, could you give us a little insight into how you've seen the sort of rise of tech both in Sweden and, of course, in India and the parallels you draw?
Sure. I think the biggest opportunity lies where we see from the Swedish perspective specifically that the Swedish perspective, they've had a view of looking at America usually, where you have one big market, you have one currency, you have the language, and it's sort of their dream place to go to. So what we're trying to do is show that in India you have the same thing, except it's less competitive in India, plus the market is all in front of you. Mm-hmm. So we look at Truecaller, you look at Brandy, and all these guys are actually trying to do it from the first time. They have seen it, and even though it was by, I wouldn't say mistake, but it just happened for Truecaller, for example, I think it would be great to get those stories out to the startup community in Sweden, which is quite large, and get them to understand what's going on in India. And of course, for the Indian companies, Sweden is the perfect access to the EU. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people, obviously, in Sweden who speak different languages of the EU, and it's a common market, and we have experience from working in the industry, plus there are a lot of tech people there. So,
yeah, there is. In fact, you guys have a lot of HQs of some really big tech products worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Even though in India, we've seen a few of them. I know. So Spotify is obviously based over there. What are some other big Swedish startups which you typically have worked with or help expand all over the world?
So, all over the world, we focus right on India. So there are quite few on that sense. There are less than 10, I would say, that now have been looking at India. Right. So that is the great opportunity looking at it. Right. The ones which have become unicorns by just being in the Nordic market.
Right.
And that could be feeling kind of funny given that Sweden only has 10 million people. But the purchasing power is quite large.
Correct.
So whatever product they've had, and given like Storytel, who is now launched here a year ago, and other companies are obviously looking at substantially larger market where the scalable model is there.
Right.
So I would see iSettle is another, which was iSettle, which was bought by PayPal, for example.
Correct.
So they would most likely look at other markets, specifically for the fintech market here in India, but they were bought up before. And I think many of them are bought up before they actually get to enter the Indian market.
I see.
So if we can actually get them to India faster, I think they will also see that there is a different evaluation. If you only look at India, obviously the valuation, or in Sweden, then you'll only see the valuation of that market or the local regional market. Whereas if you actually start something in India, then you'll have that entire market in front of you as well.
Right. So what's your typical, I would say, role that you play as an organization to enable this?
So the most important thing, which we have done this for so many years now, almost a decade and a half, is that the biggest thing that people underestimate is the connection between people. So if we can get, and this is what we're trying to do in something called the Sweden-India Tech Community, which we're launching now, and that is to get entrepreneurs to meet. Now, whether or not they will do business day one, that's irrelevant actually. When we need them to do is get the perception of each other. Because when the Swedish startup community gets to meet the entire Indian startup community, which I have to say, and I think they have no clue of what's going on in India, in Sweden. So if they just get to meet, they will get that seeing is believing. Oh my God, what's going on here? I want to be part of this train, I want to be on it. And if we get the other way around, then it's more or less like, okay, well, we can talk to the Swedes, and actually a good way to enter the European market. So there is a great opportunity there to look at those specific things. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bridge that gap, and we do that by delegation. We need to bring tech community from Sweden. We need to, not only the tech companies, but the entire ecosystem. We just did a delegation, and we visited Tech Sparks, and we did Sign and SID and all these kind of incubators. And then Invest India took a number of companies to Sweden for the Stockholm Tech Week. So we're trying to do that next year as well. So we'll bring a delegation from Sweden with more tech companies this time for Tech Sparks, and the other way around as well. So we're looking actually to do, including with Invest Stockholm, we're looking at having a full chartered flight with just the Indian startup community, and do a lot of fun stuff on a plane, and fill the plane with a lot of startups and fun, and go to the Stockholm Tech Week in the first week of September. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Wow, that's actually sounds like a
it sounds like a party.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good plan. Let's see if it happens. I don't know.
No, and again, it's funny that in the world of tech, typically you say you cross borders much so easily because we're all connected and it's so easy to jump on a call and so on. But real collaboration still happens when you actually, like you said, get a sense of the actual space of the market by going there. And I know a lot of Indian startups have been able to do that only when they actually got outside their comfort zone. In fact, even within India, we're such a huge country, startups that start up in one corner don't understand the other unless they actually go and, sort of get a feel of what's on the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you see that as a big eye-opener for the Swedish entrepreneurs that you've worked with? Because, like you said, they had pretty much just the Nordic region or EU as a sort of focus area without so much diversity.
So some of them have a little bit of a broader view. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't leave their own shores. But and there are a lot of innovators, I would say, in Sweden. A lot of innovators, whereas India has a lot of entrepreneurs. So if we can bridge that, it's even easier. But the view, what you're mentioning, is if we can get them... See, we try to just tell them it's enough if you just settle down in Mumbai, for example. If you just settle down in Delhi or Bangalore, just those parts, then I think it would be a total eye-opener for them to actually just realize what's going on in this city, 20 million people city. And if you have a solution which actually targets a big audience, then they could actually just create a unicorn just in one city. Now, for them to realize that they need to be here, they need to see it. So I think that's probably the biggest... We need to get them here. Simple as that. We need to get them here to realize
what kind of companies are you trying to get over here? And what kind of sectors, I guess, where do you think that Sweden has stronger kind of companies than India does? And where is that gap that you see?
So one sector and one technology, if you put it like that. So one sector is which is really interesting and very active between the countries, healthcare.
Okay.
So, and healthcare, you can always, and the other one is in look of technology and AI. So obviously AI is extremely interesting. So just take an example of an Indian company using a Swedish technology. Now, of course, I don't remember the name of the company, but they're using a Swedish heat-seeking camera because it turns out that breast cancer has more warm cells, right?
Okay.
So they use the camera instead to identify the cells, and they actually calibrate as an AI solution. So instead of the women have to go through radiation and that entire thing, this is a mobile solution which you can actually use anywhere. That solution would work perfectly for Sweden because not only do we have huge area, it's the third largest country in the European Union. So there's a lot of area to cover. You can't have people going everywhere and move around. So there is cross-border technology in that area, specifically in healthcare. So that's one area.
Okay. Interesting.
And again, just to expand the scope of what we're talking about here, in the 14 years that you've been doing this, obviously tech is a recent sort of up-and-coming sector where, or rather, the what we call tech, what we call startups.
I have a background, and that's what I was saying.
So what is that transition been, and what has there been like 14 years ago? Was it more? What kind of companies were doing this? And 10 years ago, what kind? 5 years ago, like.
Let me back up to actually 2000, because I was working at VC then, and we did a lot of tech investments. And we were one of the first to invest into Mumbai. It was not really a tech product company, but even though we'd create a lot of products as well. But and during that time, I think we were investing even in Sweden a lot of wireless technologies and a lot of things which then were called, if you remember, like killer apps. Yeah. And everybody thought, oh, you're soon going to take a picture with your camera. It's going to be awesome. Right?
And you'll be able to send a postcard automatically.
And you thought that was going to be the next thing. Now, it took a few years before that actually happened. Now, we were very early in the stage, but those ideas were there already. But the technology to actually deliver it was not. So I think there was a lot of money which was lost during that time, but a lot of experience were built also. So it took a while, I think, into the second part, maybe like 7-8 years later, when things started to happen even more. And any technology we actually had to do with the camera and filming, those were the ones that took off faster, a lot faster than others. I think just general because people want to take pictures of things. So that was a very interesting thing. After that, you have things, obviously in India, or say in Sweden, there were things which were helping the digitization of civil society, whatever could be there to help out. And fintech was a obvious choice. That started about 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. So now you can do anything with just something we call the mobile bank ID. You can access all the different parts where you actually have your data, or where you need to do banking, you need to pay something. You just do it with one solution, which is something similar to the API, but or UTI. It's something which was created then, and now that all the products which derived or were enabled by that was launched after that. Anything you want to buy online, all those kind of. So before that, I think the actual e-commerce was not as big as it is now.
In Sweden?
In Sweden, yeah.
Oh.
And that's happening now in India.
Yeah.
So obviously,
UPI,
before,
yeah.
And I think it's the entire demonetization has gotten a serious beat in the media. But you talk to some of the fintech companies here and say, where would you be if there wasn't a demonetization? They'll say nowhere.
No, yeah. I don't think it's demonetization. Sorry, not to be this, but I don't think it's demonetization. It's UPI that kind of enables this.
Yeah.
Demonetization was a different thing.
It was a catalyst.
But it was a catalyst. And I mean, it would have happened, but it would have taken so much longer.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, so that's a very interesting perspective. You're saying this happened 8 years ago, and now it's happening here, so there's an obvious opportunity to sort of learn and adapt.
Yeah.
Are there more such streams? So healthcare, you mentioned earlier. Again, healthcare, because there's a lot of science and technology R&D, which is obviously happening back in Sweden. But are these the broad sort of strokes of...
So anything financial, or personal finance, that will happen now. When you see what happened with the Truecaller buying chiller, for example.
Oh, yes.
So they're moving into personal finance and see what's going on there. But I think also you look in other areas, transportation.
Yeah, non-tech.
Which is, but even tech, even how you book your Ola cab, Uber, all these things, right? That's how technology is having a great solution for a current problem. All the disruptive technologies and whatever. But then you have other, I think, industries are also in defense, for example. That's a very interesting area where there's a huge amount of money you're looking in, and where there actually communication between UAVs and the drones, whatever can happen, which has also figured out to become a more consumer products, etc. So there are a lot of different things I think happening in various fields using similar technologies.
Awesome. All right. On that note, I think we're going to take a quick break, come back and talk some more.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a great week on IVM Podcast. If you're not following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We launched our listener survey last week, and we'd like you to really participate in that if you haven't already. We're offering a free mug for a few select winners if you fill out the survey and give us your email address. So go to the website, ivmpodcast.com/survey, and there's a link over there to filling out the survey. Please do, and we'd really appreciate that. On The Seen and the Unseen, Amit is in conversation with philosopher and novelist Rebecca Goldstein. They talk about the birth of ideas and how Rebecca infuses them into fiction. On paperback, Anand Sivakumaran of our very own Crocs Tales recommends his favorite non-fiction books and talks about how non-fiction books helped him write his first novel. On Cinemaya, Swati Bakshi is joined by Shonali Bose, who discusses how her background in history and political science influences her filmmaking. On the Filter Coffee podcast, ad man Jigar Fernandez is in conversation with the host Karthik Nagarajan to talk about the iconic ads he helped create and his latest creative venture, Tiki Taka. And with that, let's continue with your show.
All right, welcome back, Robin. Thanks for giving us that background on, all the stuff in terms of collaboration that you're helping enable here. But just to dig a little more about the specific sort of enablement that you're doing between India and Sweden for the tech community, right? What is some things that you see where India specifically helps the Swedish community and vice versa, or if you could put some light on that?
Yeah. So I was mentioning healthcare before, and the company, a very interesting company in the cancer treatment, Niramai was the name. But there's another one in healthcare as well. And this is specifically to the Swedish market. And I mentioned Sweden is such a large country as well in terms of space. And people live actually in different parts of the country. Now, there's a company called something again. I keep forgetting the name of it. They do they check the breathing and pulse. So for people now, the people who were born in the 30s and 40s, they are a big bunch in Sweden. And they will continue to live where they are not having to go to the hospitals and checkups all the time. So this is a product where you put on your chest to check the breathing, and then you check on your finger. You put a small pad on your finger.
Oh, yeah, I know.
You've probably heard of it.
Monitor,
they also have an AI solution, a small AI solution, right? Yeah. And that is then monitored. So you can just monitor, and it goes via cloud, and you can monitor from anywhere in the world. Now, that can continue to be the monitorization can still be in India, but the salespeople who are going out putting this on or selling these products could be anywhere. And that, I think, is a product we should do very well in Sweden. I think the cancer treatment would do well anywhere in the world.
Right. That's right.
Anything to lower the radiation for women, right? So that's one example. So you do the other way around, not necessarily on the need, but you have a company like Storytel. So obviously that is a very interesting model. Next to podcasts, obviously people walk around listening to books or whatever, the long traffic hours, whatever it can be. I think it's going to be a huge market for India as well. And just being able to have a good functioning solution with a lot of different books where you can both have the portfolio of books from Europe and US combined with the books in Europe, books from India. So that is one just easy solution, which is not high technology, but it's a very functioning solution, which works very well. Then you have something like Brandy. Brandy is a company which they specifically looked at India. They said, okay, we know that the market is there. We want to come up with a solution that actually targets India. And it's a lot to do with loyalty programs. So they tie up with companies, for example, like any kind of product company where you need to increase your loyalty programs. And so you take a picture of something. So I just bought this new brand. I take a picture of it, and it comes up, and then you earn points or something, right? So you have to get something to actually increase the loyalty program. It's not cash necessarily, but it's some hardcore stuff to actually create those loyalties, and they're very good at it, and it's quite unique what they're doing. So those are happening now because brands is becoming extremely strong in India. I don't think we've touched even close to touching the number of brands that actually will happen here or come up here. There's way too few brands in India compared to the market.
Right.
So that is something which I think we'll see a serious number of solutions coming towards.
So can I try and synthesize a little bit about what you're saying here? So the companies that you think will do well from India going to Sweden are companies which are creating devices or creating some sort of healthcare was the primary example you used, right? But I mean, both of those were device companies, right? And there's monitoring involved in all of that. And the companies that you're talking about from Sweden, which you think will do well in India, are mostly service-led companies. You think that's a fair assessment?
It's I mean, it is a semi-fair assessment. The other one, which I take another example, is called TipTap. So that's a very smart solution, actually, because as you know, there's very little storage space here. You don't have storage cellars where you have your storage space like you have in many places in Europe.
Okay, yeah,
so here you have a lot of stuff which you want to get rid of, and nobody can come and get rid of it. Usually a lot of people just throw it outside or have someone pick it up and they throw it somewhere else. So in Sweden, the solution what it does is actually come and you take a photo of a number of whatever it is, and you say, I want someone to pick this up, and I'm willing to 200 crowns or whatever it can be. And then suddenly just pops down a whole number of people who say, yes, I'm 20 minutes away, I can come and pick it up. So then they come and pick it up, and then you're done. That's it. That's all you do.
Okay.
And then they go to a recyclable station, and they throw it there. And that's where they get, the money gets
Interesting.
released.
So it's a collection system.
It's a collection thing, but you find these people going around just like Uber drivers. You just go around picking up stuff and throwing it. So here, it will probably need a more controlled things, maybe in plastic, for example, right? Or something which is very specific, where you have end-to-end solutions. So the model needs to be adapted a little bit, but I think that is a big area where actually it would also increase and probably help the recyclable stations and get the entire waste management going.
Like, I know this is so stuff you want to get rid of. It's not trash. It's electronic waste, maybe. It's furniture.
Yeah, and you can even use it, I believe, now for transporting like a courier service.
Yeah. Okay. We have some interesting analogies of things like that starting up here. But I think it's definitely something which could happen.
Yeah, no, I think like electronic waste is something which is a big problem, right?
Exactly.
People have these old phones, they don't know what to do with it. They also all have heard that putting it in like the trash is an environmental disaster, so nobody wants to do it, but instead you're left with like 8 phones forever. So I mean, like, some sort of solution which could help with that, I think would be very useful.
Some of it is worth a lot. I mean, somebody can actually pay for it.
Yeah.
So there's arbitrage going on there as well.
Now, and again, this is not necessarily India specific, but coming back to how in the tech community, what is the appeal of, let's say, an engineer today here, or a product manager, or someone in the startup circle here, to sort of go to Sweden or collaborate with Sweden, or even move there?
There's the fastest growing immigrant group in Sweden is the Indian tech community. If you look at engineers, of course, it is appealing for several reasons. One is that you can either come there and work with the larger companies who are very technology savvy, even the ones who are working heavily on digitizing the industry. So it's still technology. Use different technologies for machine learning or actually digitizing processes, whatever it can be. But it's also the quality of life. I mean, many of the ones I meet, hundreds of engineers every year, and the ones who have families, they want to stay.
Yeah,
that's a clear indication. I think the kids, family, school, whatever it can be. So quality of life is very, very good. And there's also that there's a clear need of engineers in Sweden. And there's the technology there. So if you look at the other way around, for example, then Sweden has a lot of technology which they can offer and look into India. So that's the offering, I think, from the Swedish tech startups or it can be for India, because they also need the engineers in India. And also they have no clue of how to work in this market. So they need not only the engineers, but need the knowledge of how to work in this market. Perspective. And if you can do it. So we met in this delegation, we met a company at Indian Institute of Science. They were working in the rocket field and the space field. And they were all there if they could do the 10x, like 1/10 of the cost. So if we can get the Swedish companies to realize that there is actually a completely different mindset on doing things cheaper, I think we've gotten a long way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's how we're sort of designed to, right? We're designed to be frugal here, so that's.
And then you have a huge export market. You learn to do that. You can literally do business with any country.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that knowledge India has, Sweden doesn't.
That's true. Compared to the rest of the EU, you mentioned that Sweden could be like a gateway to the EU. Compared to the rest of the EU, what makes you a little more appealing than the rest?
Language, first of all. All the Swedes speaks English very well. Both writing, talking. It's brought up because we don't dub the movies or anything, and they get to learn English from 3rd, 4th grade or something. So even small kids learn how to speak English fairly quickly. But so that's one. Language is super important. It makes people communicate.
It's
so
the
that's
biggest thing, right? I mean, I have friends who moved to Germany and were miserable because they couldn't talk to anybody except for the people who they worked with.
Exactly. And I think the other thing is that it's cultural-wise, it is a very difficult country to move to sometimes if you don't know and understand the culture. But if you read up on it and understand it, then it's better. Because it's a very, it's a very equality-based country as well. So for women, it's a huge market potential, I think, for many other parts of many other parts of EU. So it's a very equality-centered society, I would say.
Could you tell us a little more about that?
So even though in the tech sector there's a ridiculously low number of female entrepreneurs in the tech sector, that is the fastest growing group, though. It's growing very fast. Oh. And one of the reasons I think that there's a significant number of women jumping ship from their big companies and want to start something. And then you have the younger crowd who actually have no prejudice about anything. So with the 20 and 30-year-olds, they don't understand necessarily cultural differences or why should we do this because my parents did that. They do their own thing. And it's a very individualistic, not thinking, but you're brought up to be an individual in Sweden. So you can actually, you do your own thing. So whether you're a man or a woman doesn't really matter. So the focus there also is that they have a feminist government. So anytime I want to arrange a panel, for example, with government officials, say how many women are in the panel. Yeah. Oh. So the focus is there constantly. Doesn't mean that we're the most equality country in the world. Every country has a lot to work on. But I think for the tech industry, you can see the ones who are doing fairly well are the ones who actually have a big diversity in the not only men and women, but people from other countries. Mm-hmm. You look at the Marshall phones, earphones, and urban ears. That one company is called Marshalls, right? So they, you go to their company in their head office. It's people from all around the world, and it's English everywhere. So it's truly international in the all corporate offices of those companies. Same as Spotify. It's really difficult for them to actually, I think, sometimes find housing for everyone. But the dynamic work becomes so much more interesting if you have people from even our tech delegation we took here. There was age differences from 76 to like 27 and half men, women. It was the best delegation I've ever been to. We had so much fun.
Wow. I know. And you
creativity is massive.
That's true. Actually, diversity does lead to so many different inputs and perspectives, right? So I think that always...
Is that like a Swedish government kind of agenda to try and increase diversity through immigration?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
That itself is a unique agenda.
It is, yeah. It's not not exactly common in the world today.
No, it's not. And I wouldn't say it's going very well every time because, if you do it in a controlled way, it's easier. If you do it in an uncontrolled way. So we had a big influx of immigrants, for example. Now, many of them will realize and be very entrepreneurial and create companies. Many have. Mm-hmm. But if you have, 10 million people taking in a lot of people, that becomes a little bit difficult.
Right.
But if you do it in a controlled way and you have a good strategy, I think it's perfect. You need to. Cool. The world is open today. It's global supply chains, everything. If you don't understand that part, then you'll just be a local market.
Right. Yep.
What do you have planned just to sort of, let's say 2019? What's your agenda? Of course, apart from send a plane full of startup folks
on a party.
Yeah, that's a big thing. So we're trying to do a number of ministerial visits where we take the startup community. There is something called the Joint Action Plan and Joint Innovation Plan when the Indian Prime Minister came to visit Sweden on April 17th. So that was signed. So in that, there's a lot of innovation and startups focused on. So we try to do a lot of events in Sweden as well to get the tech community familiar with India, first of all. Mm-hmm. And then when we travel to India, we'll continue to meet and participate in panels. So my colleague Cecilia Oldner, she was just participating in IIT Startup Smart Masterclass. It's called Startup with IIT Kanpur was leading. So it was 250 investors and mainly startups which were in Bangalore the other day. So she sat in the panel to talk about internationalization. So we'll continue to participate in many of those things. So I think it's very important that we get this message. Once we started, we need to continue with the message of the internationalization process. Right. And even for the Indian companies, it's very important. You can't just be a local company. You have to have a broader view, even if somebody buys you in 5 years or 2 years or 3 months, by the way. So it doesn't really matter. You have to have the grand strategy. So once you get there, then you have to understand it. And that's where you get exposed to a lot of different people who have that experience. So we try. That's how we're going to engage a lot more, and we have to engage a lot more. I think with not only the IITs and the universities, but other incubators. NASCOM Warehouse we met as well. So and legal lawyers, could even be investment bankers, investors, angel investors. Get them on board and get them part of a community and launch some sort of communication. I hope it's not going to be one WhatsApp group, though. It's going to be quite heavy.
That's Indian localization.
I know.
Yeah,
the Swedes don't have that because, SMSs were free, so we never started that. But now they're starting to realize that. So let's see if we can do something.
I think WhatsApp is all about the blue check. You want to see if somebody read your message, right? I think that's the number one reason why people...
See, now I learned something new. I didn't even think of that. But yeah, you're right. That's probably it.
Yep.
Those are the 2 dots on the end.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an India-Sweden WhatsApp group. I see it in the future.
Yeah.
It's there somewhere.
Which will degenerate into good morning messages.
Yes.
Oh, man. Oh, no.
You never know.
You never know. But great. I mean, I am looking forward. I haven't been to Stockholm or Sweden
Please visit.
yet. I am looking forward to...
We'll go on the party plane.
We will go on the party plane.
Yes, you should. Definitely. Do a lot of podcasts from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for doing this, Robin.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great fun.
Just a reminder for everybody, please sign up for the Slack channel, the ivmpodcast.com/Shunya1, or there's a button join Slack. Click on that. We'll send us your email address and we will send you back an invite. And also, please do make your recommendations and reviews on iTunes or on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this. Give us a rating. That stuff really does help.
Yes, and if folks want to get in touch with you, Robin, how do they reach out? Are you on Twitter? Can you give us a shout out on
Sweden India Business on Instagram? It's Facebook is Sweden India Business Council or info@sibc.se. Probably the easiest.
Amazing. That's great. Let's hope all you guys who are listening in, if you want to jump on board and go to Sweden or meet some folks who are coming here, please say hello. And we will see you guys next week. Thank you.
Hi listeners, we at Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund have come up with a special podcast series called MF 101 in collaboration with Bloomberg Quint. MF 101 is an informative series that will help you understand the recipe behind mutual fund investments. And what's more, it's coming from the chefs of the mutual fund buffet table, from the very own fund managers and analysts who are the manufacturers of the funds that help you realize your investment goals. New episodes out every Monday. You can listen to the show on the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Every week comes a show where 3 people come together to tell you about stuff they like. A movie, a TV show, a book, and other stuff. Tune in every Monday on the IVM Podcast app to IVM Likes. Batman approves this message. Thank you, Batman.